Milton Council Meeting Workshop for September 24th, 2024. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hurst,
Present.
Mr. Sodders,
Present.
Mr. Fogel,
Here.
Ms. Gregory. Here. Ms. Metz. Here. Mr. Horn.
Here.
Mr. Dorman.
Here. All right, first thing on the agenda tonight is the distribution supply purchases. Mr. Herring.
Yeah, Mayor. So typically these are made in smaller, the purchases are made in smaller quantities, so it doesn't meet the council threshold. However, due to the fact that we're getting close to the end of the year and identified the need for some repair kits, and for fire hydrants and a certain size of a fire hydrant for stock, and then some grinder pumps just to have in stock for the sanitary system that goes to Ludlow Falls. It seemed like it would just make sense to bid it all at one time. Or quote it all at one time, which I did. And the pricing came in pretty good. It just met the threshold to be voted on by council.
All right. Council have any questions? No? All right, next on the agenda is the refuse truck purchase. Mr. Herring.
Sure. So I supplied council. I first supplied it to the budget committee, and then I supplied it to council on the refuse truck. I mean, basically the highlights were, for everybody listening, would be that when we started our trash service, we had purchased the 2021 Labrie Helping Hand truck, and then we also purchased a bulk Freightliner bulk collection truck. And at the same time, knowing that we'd had to have two trucks, we were able to find the 2010 International Labrie Helping Hand. The system doesn't work without two trucks. Today, I actually was picking up today because Brian's on vacation and we're kind of short-staffed, and 120 cans into it. The hydraulics or something's messing up on the first out truck. Luckily, because of the rain, I had a free guy, and Joey picked up 90%, well, probably 80% of the route. It's just one of those things where it's working fine and then it's not. And without the backup truck today, then we wouldn't have got trash picked up today, basically. So the system doesn't work without two trucks. So I think I pretty much highlighted everything else. It's just these trucks get worked so hard. I mean, they're the hydraulics, and it's hot, and they're starting and stopping, and it's got caustic material. And so the kicker is that we've got a 22-month lead time to replace the 2010. The price is actually a little bit lower than the original. The biggest reason in that is we're not going to have the dual steering, but it'll meet all the other specifications that we had originally. I did note that I think you guys know me. If there's a used piece of equipment out there, I'm going to find it. It's in California. I don't care where it's at. If it helps us and it saves us money. In this case, they have so many working parts that it's hard for us to work on them in-house. Even Steve calls the mechanic a lot because there's a couple thousand working parts that we don't work on. And if they don't take care of the used truck, and you'll never really know that until you get it out on the road for a little while, then to me it's not worth the risk of putting the money in on a used trash truck. So really, I mean, we went and looked at chassis. A lot of your bigger cities are using these cab over chassis that are going to be $100,000, $200,000 more just for the vehicle. And we like the International. That happens to be the chassis that we have in our fleet right now on our single axle dump trucks. We've had problems with the Freightliner. We've had problems with the radiators, had problems with the mechanics of them. And so the Freightliner and International are relatively the same price and the same wait time. So from order time to delivery, you're looking at, as of last week, about 22 months for delivery. So it's mainly a matter of getting in line and getting in line before the price. The prices are supposed to go up sometime late fall before the first of the year. That's all I had on that.
All right, thanks. Council, have any questions?
I have a few. One of the questions I wanted to ask is in reference to fixing in-house. So with both of these, I'm assuming from what you're saying, you try to fix some of them, but we have to send it out, and I'm sure that's probably costly. What's the normal cost when we have to send it out to get any type of repairs with hydraulics or what have you? That, because it sounds like that's something that fails more than often, or you have the most issues with.
Right, yeah, I mean, every time it goes out, you just, I mean, if I don't know, I just start the PO at $2,000, because, I mean, you just don't know, and the problem is with the 2021, everything's fairly new, so we kind of know what we're getting into there. I'll be honest with you, my biggest fear on the 2010 is there's a few things on that operating system that we're gonna cost, they'll cost more than we paid for the truck, which was $22,500. So, I mean, there's 2 or 3, the helping hand system itself is gonna be probably close to triple the cost that we paid for the truck. And I'm just got my fingers crossed that that doesn't go out before, before we can replace it. I looked around, there's, even if we were interested, there's really nothing out there that would be worth bringing. We really did get lucky. The used truck came from Fort Wayne, Indiana. They did have maintenance records on it, but there were some issues that even Versailles was having with it, but for the price, it was worth the risk. But yeah, I mean, 2,000 is the starting point, but I know there's 3 features on there that could be that, you know, you're in the $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 range to replace, so.
So I'm assuming the 2021 Freightliner is still under warranty?
No, it's out of
not.
warranty.
Oh, already it's out
Yeah.
of warranty. Wow.
How long do warranties last on those?
On
This new
those-
one, how long will the warranty last?
I'd have to pull the actual file on it that was, just like a car, that was drivetrain, and then there was 1 year on the, I think 1 year on the operating parts, and then the, drivetrain, and, there's a radiator actually, we're on the 3rd radiator on that Freightliner. And so Piqua has the same Freightliner models we do, so when Piqua has a problem, they call us and say, you know, watch out for this, and sure enough, they've put like 4 or 5 radiators in theirs, and we're on our 3rd. The first 2 were covered, and then the 3rd was out of warranty within
Wow.
about 8 months ago, I believe, something like that.
Is it a flaw with the radiator or just?
Nobody can say. I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, nobody can find exactly what's causing them to go out. It's just the extreme heat I know that the truck goes through is it's my opinion and Steve's opinion that their radiators are probably standard for your truck that you're driving down the road, but a truck that works kind of like trash trucks do, they're just not enough. That's kind of our
What's the
thought.
expected lifespan of the?
I mean, most places will tell you, they get about 10 years before they really start putting a lot of money and having a lot of problems with them. I mean, we tried to do 10-year fleets on most of our equipment, but we found that with proper maintenance, obviously we can stretch those out. This is probably the exception to that, which is kind of like reason number 3, because the 2021 would be the last payments in 29. I didn't want to put the city in a position where they were having to look at 2 trash trucks ever at the same time, because I know I won't be here when that happens, but that would be bad business for us to be like both trucks are like our 2010 is currently, and I'm trying not to leave us in that position.
So, a couple other questions. Is there a contingency plan in place? I know you said that, you know, this new truck would replace the 2010,
Mm-hmm.
and you're starting to see a lot more issues. If something happens that just totally fails, what's our contingency plan? What
So-
are our options?
The one thing we've done before, the bulk truck has a tipper on it. So we've actually, in 3 separate occasions, we've used our bulk truck to pick up regular refuse. The issue with there is there's no compaction. So you just basically, after you dump 10 cans, you have to take the pickup arm and just shove everything back and so on. So the downside to that is a 6-hour route takes about 12 hours plus to pick up. So the trash would get picked up, it would just, you're talking long delays. The only other option would be to find out if a bigger city in our area had one we could possibly borrow from them until we got our truck.
Okay. And since the last payment is not until May of '29 on the current one, and this goes through to purchase this one, it's gonna be farther out than that. Is this something, and this is one I don't even wanna ask, but is this something that is gonna ultimately generate a rate increase for
I
folks
don't
with?
think so. The
Rick?
fund, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Were
no.
you done? I
No,
didn't.
yeah, no,
Okay.
that's fine.
Yeah, so we've been in the black on this since we started, which can't say that before we started our refuse. So one of the purposes to saying that once this gets started, like 3 years from now, we'll have to look at replacing this truck, is that the fund is actually pretty self-sufficient. It's been doing real well, so this won't have any effect on the rates.
Oh, great news. Okay.
So then on timing, you said late fall for price increase.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to agree and pass a resolution the 1st of October, would that be sufficient?
Yes. Yeah, luckily, the salesman, and this is a Sourcewell purchase, which that's probably the best thing of all, because I've found pricing, state bid and Sourcewell. Sourcewell's actually always been cheaper than state bid, for one. 2, the salesperson at Best Equipment is a local guy. He was my counterpart kind of in Greenville for many years, and he's extremely honest. So like, if he would call me and say, look, you know, we're actually looking at 2 weeks from now, and I would say, hey, we maybe want to work faster, but it doesn't sound like anything would come down the road till late October, so we should be fine.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the bid award for the Stillwater River Water Main Crossing.
So this was really good news. On this project, which I have to tell you from a personal standpoint, this is one that I just can't wait to have done. Personally, just knowing the age of the lines that we're talking about, and I don't have a lot keep me up at night, but this may be one of those items at times. The engineer's estimate on the project was $1,078,578. RB Jurgens came in with the bid of $639,752. Ironically, they were only like $140 off from Outdoor Services that did the booster station in the park, and they did the North Miami Street. However, they were low bid, coming at $639,752. And so I know I think around 60,000 of that, the village was paying engineering costs. And then I didn't get a chance to recalculate the numbers because the OPWC grant and the OWDA loan were going off of that $1,078,000 engineer's estimate. So I'm just gonna, the numbers don't really quote them, but I was thinking the OPWC grant would be around 300,000, and then the OWDA loan would be closer to like 339 in that ballpark, which is down from the original numbers quite a bit.
So the cost to the village to run the water main under the river is going to be less than $400,000.
The way I understand it, yes.
And that just gets us, how far does that take it? Does it just get it under to the other side of the river, or is that going all the
This-
way?
This is from, basically, this is gonna be going from the pump station It's because there was, so I don't forget, there was an alternate bid that came in a lot higher. The alternate bid was to bore it from the pump station all the way across the river and then all the way into Stillwater Crossings. It was a lot higher, it wasn't worth it. So this will have some open cuts prior to the boring under the river, but it'll tie the east tip pump station all the way into the crossings on the other side of the river.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we're not gonna go into regular session tonight like the agenda says, but we will discuss some of the things that were on the regular session agenda. The first of it is the resolution for authorizing the lease, purchase, or equipment of the trash truck, and we kind of already went through that. The next is the adopting of the economic development plan for the Stillwater Crossing North area. So we need to kind of go over this, and do we have any questions that we want to ask the developer, and then any changes that we want to make or ask about anyway? So we can always postpone if people would like to take the chance to read through it. Up to you guys, though. Would you prefer to talk about it now, or?
I will tell you honestly, there's a lot in there.
There's a lot.
I've just had an opportunity to just kind of skim through it. There's a lot of areas that are blank, that aren't totally filled in. And so I would like to have an opportunity to digest it a bit more, and maybe when Manager Sheridan gets back, if we have some questions, we can send those over to him and he can find those out from the developer before we meet next, and then maybe this would be on the agenda at that point.
All right, that sounds like a good idea.
Would we be able to discuss it though, again, like in a meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
'Cause there's just a lot of information.
Yep. All right. So we're down to old business. Is there any old business to discuss?
I have something.
All right.
If you would allow me.
Absolutely.
The park restroom grant did clear the National Park Service. I'm literally just waiting on the documents. Once the documents can be signed, then we can actually start moving on it. I'm definitely not gonna do a thing beforehand. I did that on a smaller grant without thinking. Luckily, they let me get by with it, but I learned my lesson. However, it's not something for you guys to decide right away, but I made contact with our liaison for the grant, and I just kind of wanted you guys to ponder your thoughts on, so I think we'll get $56,000 to go towards the building that I had estimated 120 with the pad, plumbing, electrical, and everything. With that said, I think we were gonna be well below that, closer to the 110 range. However, I met with someone in the park who is actually working with the old Riverside, and I can't think of the name of what they call the company now. It just flew right out of my mind. But she has a donor that would like to put a adult swing, or a swing for adults with disabilities, in our park. And so we met down there, and there's space in the playground that was left for things of that nature. So I wanted to let you guys know about that. It could be like a dual swing, kind of like we have down there, but maybe a larger version. It could also be a swing that you could put a wheelchair or something on.
We used to have one of those at the VA, and it, like, in hindsight, I look back and it was probably 1960s sketchy, but for people who used it, I mean, it was really cool. People really enjoyed it. A lot of people that never thought they'd get the opportunity to do that again, you know, they'd get them up there, get it locked down, and it was really neat. It's outside our old adult daycare.
And while we were discussing that, she made a comment that really kind of made me think, and that was that There's a lot of times when we have festivals and events that there's certain people that may not come down because there's not adult facilities. So I guess what I'm asking you guys to ponder is if we ordered the restroom with possibly a third family restroom that had things such as an adult changing table and things like that. I know it will increase our project costs, but to have the thought that we have events and stuff down there and there's people that don't come down because they can't, it just really hit me when she said that. So I just wanted to throw that out there to see if that's something that you guys would be interested in. When I send out, because I'm gonna put the bid pack together, I'm just gonna take the examples that I've gotten on the buildings and do the bid packet. If you would allow me to do an alternate for that, like a family restroom or something of that nature, I just kinda wanted to get your opinion before I did that,
Yeah.
so.
Two thumbs up.
I think that sounds great. Thank you for that work.
Okay,
Yeah, thanks.
cool. That's all I had, thank you.
All right, any old business?
I think on the agenda with the old business is the EMS, the discussion we've had back and forth with Union Township Life Squad and the ambulance board. I know that several of us have had a chance to attend their meeting. I gave everyone a packet of information. It has cost per run. It has the number of runs that have been out at Randall Residence in 2024, since the Randall Residence opened in March to now. There's some other answers to questions in here. Back in March, there was a letter that Mr. Sheridan sent out looking for answers to some questions so that we could take a close look at if there was any funding options that we had within the village to provide any additional funding to them to offset the costs that they're incurring for the Randall residents. So I do have in the packet a lot of answers to those questions, along with some of the budget details that they provided through 2023 as well. I also included, I called the Miami County Auditor's Office and got some information about the tax abatement with the land value and the improvement value and those type of things. So all that information is in there as well. So I just thought I would provide it to everyone so you had it in front of you to take a look at and digest as well, because I think there's been a lot of discussion on which direction that we ultimately move forward in with that in providing any type of funding. I know back in September of 2017, you know, and this comes back, that there was a letter that was provided and signed by the mayor, vice mayor, and council members that, you know, when it came time, you know, we would work with them in trying to figure out what options are on the table, that type of thing. So I am supportive of providing some type of funding from the village to support them with the runs that are being made up at the Randall residence. What that figure is, I don't know. You know, that's what we have to try to ultimately figure out. But that's my 2 cents. So.
Well, thanks for all the work on this, Scott.
Yeah. So, didn't know if there was any other questions or any input from anyone else on council.
I also agree that going back to 2017 and the discussions that were going then, was well before the Randall residence was built, the discussions that were going on was how to support and what that looked like. And I don't think we ever really came up with a firm plan at that time. Then we had that city manager leave, and then I think at one time everybody kind of wondered if the development was even going to happen. So I think it just kind of sat in limbo in the people's minds compliance probably for everyone except for the Union Township Life Squad. And I think they've been patient, and I think we owe it to come through with some kind of decision one way or the other. I mean, to continue to just say we're gonna talk about it is, I don't know, just kind of like political lip service, and I don't think our council's really ever been big on that or intentionally do anything like that. So I think we need to be more action oriented and drill down to the needs, the realities, and what we can bring to the table to continue to support that service in our community.
All right.
This number up at the top, $16,000.
So that's a calculation. The average cost per run so far this year, what they provided to us was $530. Now, this is not the average charge for services during a call. That's just the cost per run. So that's to get the ambulance out the door from what they provided in here. So I took that number times the 30 runs to date, and that's what come up. I think it was technically 15,900. I just rounded it up to 16,000. So that's over a 7-month time frame. That's what the cost is to get the ambulance out the door to the Randall residents.
So if we double that number and think about $35,000 for a year subsidy, whatever you want to call it, and we'd have to figure out the language of what we want that to look like in the years going forward.
Correct.
But at least as a place to start, it's way far off what they asked for. But to me, that is reasonable to cover that, since they're not getting any of the tax money directly from the Randall residents. So that seems reasonable to me. If you, I mean, because you can justify it, we can justify it to the citizens, we can justify it from a fiscal standpoint now. To point to this and say, look, we're covering the cost of them actually getting the ambulance out to and back, and then they're still billing insurance or whatever else they do for the services they provide, but at least we're covering the cost of getting them there and back.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know how many beds they're up to now?
I know, that's what I was wondering, because that March to September, March
Yeah.
through June was maybe not many beds
Okay.
full.
I know there's 60 assisted living beds and 16 memory care. I believe the last information I received is they were somewhere around the range of 20 or 24, but I'd have to call to see. But I can call and
It's
ask.
definitely more. So that was quite a while ago. Yeah, I don't know, but it's definitely closer to capacity, I would think.
Okay. If everyone's okay with it, I will call the contact. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think her name is Gail. I'll call her tomorrow and find out, what their capacity is right now. So at least we have an idea, because that number that, we have with the 30 runs, we might need to, think about that a bit more.
I think the metric they use is
But what are they doing?
for every
Just-
bed.
They're gonna continue the same thing,
Who's they?
Union Township Life Squad. Are they gonna continue just doing what they're doing, and then we're supposed to make up the difference? Or
I think two of the
is
things
that
that
where
we're.
council wants to go with this? Is just pick up all the pieces?
I don't think we're picking up all the pieces. I think
We're
just
picking up
coming
quite a few pieces
alongside.
if we're doing this. I'm just asking. I just wanna know where council was thinking, where they're wanting to go with it. I'm not against, I'm just asking.
Right. I was just starting to say, I think the metric that's used for estimating runs is 1.5 runs per bed per year. So I don't know where they're at on that, or if they're living true to that through so far what they've got. And I don't know that that's the run without services. I don't know, these aren't trauma runs, so I don't know that they're get real expensive like you would after, I don't know, that's not my world. But I'm gonna guess these are probably a little more on the side of something, they're ruling out a broken hip, or someone's fallen, or someone's bumped their head. There's standard rules that they send people to be checked out for. I don't know that they're overly intense in supplies and equipment and stuff like that. But to your point, Scott, I mean, I think, when we were talking with them, one of the things was talking about, the board is made up of, I think in large part, mayor of each individual community that makes up the township, and then someone from the township at large. And I think that, our move going forward on that is to be involved, is to have a member from our council on that board and interacting from the inside out, figuring out what as a community and what our role is moving forward. And in talking to Chief Weichert, the first time we met with her, which is, gosh, going over a year ago now, she met me, you and Sarah. And it sounded like, in general, like it's tough to field enough people to get the job done with the resources they had already, that they were taxed, and that this was just also making it worse. But like you said, we can't be the answer to every problem, and we can't just write checks for that. So something has to be looked at going forward at what that looks like.
Yep.
So, looking at what Dayon said, with the 1.5 run per bed per year is the national average. So you got 60 memory care or 60 assisted living and 16 memory care, that's 76. So times that, 1.5, that's 114 runs. That's what the national average is. So far, it sounds like things are, at this point,
Your cottages
well
are
under
also
that.
gonna be, it's not Randall House proper, but those are people that are on that cusp of leading that level of care. Those are probably people with services, coming in too, home health, things like that. So I'm gonna guess you're gonna, just like Vavon Court and McKinley Commons probably has a few more runs than, say, your neighborhood, Scott. I would think there may be a higher amount of runs to there too, just because they are taking, it's an older population, because those units are they 55 and older, or?
they are.
Yeah, so.
So something else to keep in mind, I remember when the lawyer was with us, I don't remember his name, that he reported to us that we could fund them this way, but other similar organizations could then also ask for the same support. I think
For
that's
sure.
something else to keep in mind.
Mhm.
Because if we do go and do this, and I'm not saying it's not reasonable to do it, but, you know, we have a senior citizen community center organization. Well, now there's extra senior citizens being brought into the community. That's gonna be maybe more resources. They're not getting paid either, just like the township or the life squad's not getting paid. So what, would it be reasonable for them to come and ask for a subsidy, because now they have extra people to, you know, support in the community? It's not apples to apples, I understand. What about the library? You know, I mean, and the library may be a different organization, I'm not sure. So, but it's just something to keep in mind, that when you open the door, the door's open.
Yeah, I think one of the big differences too, with probably the other organization that's being most dollars abated from is the school, but that on the residential side, that's only a 4-year abatement. And then when it comes to the, like Randall House, them being abated to school, they're not sending any kids to school, you know, so that kind of is a wash in my opinion on that. Yeah, that's a great point, that, you know, who else comes out and says,
Maybe we just create like a fund or something like that, you know, people could, or organizations would be able to apply, kind of like a grant. just set up a grant, and then people could apply to it.
Are there case studies where this situation has happened in other communities?
I'm sure there have, it's not something I'm aware of.
Okay, and is there a way to make legislation so that it's not full of loopholes for other organizations to come and say, well, we lost this much money? Because that's kind of my concern, is like opening up Pandora's box really is like, then all of a sudden everybody wants money, and that's not, we just don't have a bottomless supply of money here,
Well, I
so.
think the lawyer even said that it wasn't, you weren't allowed to like legally reimburse for losses. That was, you couldn't do that. You could give money, but you couldn't reimburse for losses.
So is there ways that we can just make it to just give money to the Life Squad?
Well, we set up a grant and then let them apply and then.
But you can't make it just exclusive for them. There's no way to just cut out anybody else from asking for
Right.
the same thing.
I think the lawyer that we're talking about wasn't a lawyer that worked for us, so I don't know that we should take
I'd
that
certainly
as
say, I
a.
don't think he was.
Previously did work for us.
Okay,
Yeah.
but his comments
On
in
the
that,
south
in that
side, yes.
situation was not in reference to consulting for us under that, correct?
Well, true, but at the
Well-
same time, is he gonna give bad advice?
Yes, but he's
legally?
also kind of the expert in that field.
Okay,
So it's, I don't think he would lead us in the wrong direction. He would have no
Right,
reason
right.
to. But yes, you're correct. He wasn't working for us.
So my suggestion, I guess, would be, take a look at this information that we have in front of us. Let me know if you have any other questions that I can reach out to Mr. Hill or Chief Weichert. I'll find out tomorrow how many beds are filled, what capacity they're currently at the Randall residence, and provide that to everyone. And then I guess we would be ready to maybe talk about this more at the next council meeting and try to come to some type of decision at that point, which direction to go.
There's something else, that- I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
mean to cut you
I was
off.
gonna say
Okay.
budget.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
the budget committee.
Yeah, go
But
ahead.
also about the beds, and having that number's fine, but I would, question number one, do we open the door and do the funding? Question two is how much? And I would rather go slow
I agree.
than take the 1.5 times all the beds they can possibly have and then get this number that's $75,000 or whatever. And, then over the course of time, nothing gets cheaper. And so whatever you do now, they're going to expect more in the future. That doesn't mean we'll have to do more, but it just means that's just the way things go. I would rather, and a lot of times your funding works based off in arrears, basically. You give them, they reported this looks reasonable, do that for a set amount of time, and then let them collect more data, and then address, do we bump it up, do we take it down, do we eliminate it? It's easier to go up than to go down, in that capacity, at least in my opinion. Imagine the potential PR or community relations difficulties if, the story is that we're not supporting them anymore. I don't know. Just some thoughts.
So it was a 2017 council that had put pen to paper and kind of put forth a desire to support them. Does the current council feel that same desire to support based on what we understand?
He just said
I
that you
do.
wouldn't leave them hanging.
Right.
I mean, So there was no.
There was no
I mean,
promise to make them whole or anything
No
like that,
promises
correct?
at all,
A
really.
desire to support, help.
Right.
Does the current council still, with what's known, feel a desire to help in an undetermined manner?
I do,
I do.
definitely.
And does anybody feel scared from the first number that Chris threw out? Did you say 35, 36?
Yeah, I doubled this at 32 and just went with 35 because math's easier that way.
Well, we've got
My-
budget meetings coming up, so, and it didn't get discussed last time, but it is on the agenda to be discussed, so.
And
Okay.
my biggest concern.
I just want to gauge the level of fear, desire to help, and that, and discussing the worry of other people coming forward and saying stuff. I mean, that's part of the fear.
That's kind of my concern, is like what Chris said, is what about when the senior center says, hey, and I wasn't here in 2017, but I do think that like supporting them is important, because what they do is important, right? Like,
Right.
I live in West Milton. I want them to come and get me if something happens. I want them to come and get my mom if something happens, you know. I just want to make sure that we can write that legislation
Sure,
is
sure.
possible to make it to where it's legal. It's not going to come back and bite us. It's not going to be something where everybody's trying to come and get more. And that once it's done, like it's done. Because it may change, but they also, you know, I think the point was brought up of like what part are they playing and what are they doing to help also with this? And would we be paying this for 30 years, or is it 15?
That was the other thing, this,
One, if we do anything, right? It's just 1 year at a time.
exactly.
Sorry, I
No,
didn't mean to interrupt.
no, I was just gonna say
Okay.
exactly the same thing. No long-term commitment. I
Okay.
would not be in favor of any long-term commitment, just a year-to-year, call it a subsidy and then a review.
And I think part of having a council member on their board would also be bringing back, you know, they meet quarterly, you know, so we would be hopefully getting feedback at least 4 times a year as to, so that we're prepared to act one way or another, or not act one way or
And
another.
that should increase transparency too. I'm not
Yes.
saying that they have not made an effort, I'm just saying having somebody there is different and part of the process.
No,
Opens it up.
to me, that's a big part of it, is having, so to speak, skin in the game. You know, we've got someone that's a part of their decision-making process and able to come back and let us know how things are going or not going, or, you know, the couple meetings we went to, they seem to be, you know, it's a group of our peers. It's community members from the other communities that are in similar leadership roles on their councils and mayors, and, you know, I think everybody's got the same vested interest.
You are a part, or you're
No.
the other mayors are a part?
Yes, and from what we think, that's how our mayor at the time, Michael Coate, was on the board and has been on the board this whole time. So the way I understand it is it's supposed to be made up of members from that. Now, I think one of the things Scott had asked for was their charter or bylaws, so that we have a clear understanding of what that is. But, I mean, I think that's a key component in keeping us in the loop and being more aware, and being a part of it.
Yep.
What year, do we know what year they start getting all the money from the water from after the TIF is done, what year that is?
It'll probably break up because the abatement kind of goes, like, once the building is built, kind of thing, so once that building hits its, you know, maturity level, then, or maturity,
Oh,
then,
each different building, so the cottages would be one thing, and
Yep.
the
I
Rainbow
think the big
Residence.
number is from 30 years from 2025, really, so. Because the main building wasn't done, the taxes are in arrearage, it wasn't done till 2024. So if there wasn't an abatement, it would be, they would start receiving tax money in 2025 at the end of that first year. So, to my understanding, that's how it would be, so 30 years from then. Does that sound right to you, Lene?
2039.
I'm not sure at this
Okay.
point when it would start, so I'd have to look at all the numbers. I know that they're all different,
Yeah,
so.
Okay.
if that's the right one.
I just don't have it all in front of me.
You had that in here specifically.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I
That's
just-
okay.
Yeah, I think discussing it every 1 to 2 years and going forward from that, and then having in whatever legislation asking for, these same answers or questions that I asked for before, asking for those annually, can we get?
I think if we've got someone from council on the board, I don't think we have to ask those questions because that council member should have access to that information. And it, it's not a request thing anymore. It should be, I think a process that's in place would be my guess.
Here's the one I was looking for. That whole one is. for
And
the-
maybe when we do it, when we do it, we can put like a formula that's done every year to be relooked at in like 5 to 10 years, because this is, potentially a really long process. And, I mean, we've been talking about this for a year,
To get the-
and I feel like
the full value of
it wouldn't be a gift to future council members in 20 years to spend a whole year like discussing this, and if we could just kind of make it good now, that might be helpful. Like, if there's a formula of like how much, like the percentage of the beds and the cost or whatever it is. I don't know, I have no idea what that looks like, but.
All right. Anything else?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I forgot, when Mr. Fogel started asking questions, I did want to add to the refuse discussion. Jill is she's checking with multiple lenders to find out, and she's actually sending items to Lene to read through, to see is it better to do, say, a 7-year lease, make a payment ahead, provided that payment goes into some sort of fund, we would get all the money back without paying interest. Is it better to wait until 26 on the delivery to actually make a payment, like make a down payment? So by the next meeting, she'll have went through about probably at least 3 lenders, talked to Lene, and find the best option or 2 that council would think would be the best way to go with that. I meant to say that, and I'm sorry I forgot.
All right,
So
no.
they've been working hard on that. And I just had one other thing. So, I mean, the community made it through North Miami Street water line, Hay Street water line, Calumet Road. I don't know if you've all been down Calumet.
Yeah.
Great.
Nice.
But,
It's so nice.
I take my hat off to the crew because the micro's only as good as the Durapatching and the crack sealing, and it was a lot of work, and the guys worked really hard on that. And so I think we did the right thing out there. I think it's gonna last for a while. Paving is now complete. Hamilton Street and J is at the profile that it was 45 years ago, finally again. Sump pumps are gone, the curbs are fixed. The thermoplastic went down yesterday on all the areas that we had been holding off on, so that's done. So we don't have any major scheduled projects in the roadway, so everybody knows, hopefully they don't. I know that people were tired of the detours, and they'd hit a detour and have another detour, and but it was progress. The water lines, I mean, Tim was with them every day, they did an awesome job. Huge projects for us, the water lines were huge projects. So I just want to thank everyone, the guys for all the hard work, Tim for the inspection, the office staff for taking all the calls. To get through that section of construction was a lot. Like for a town our size, that is a lot of improvements being done around the same year and a half. So, and thank you to council for putting the money into our infrastructure. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you,
I'm just
Ben.
curious, what roads are on the schedule for next year in the village to be repaved?
So the passer rating has about 10 roads that we're due in like 1 to 3 years. So what we typically do is, or what I like to do is I like to pick the worst passer rated roads and then check them again just prior to the end of the year, because it's not uncommon for a road that looks kind of bad in the spring to look a lot worse after, you know, travel season and things like that. So, don't have the list yet, only that, the roads I think that are on schedule, would be on schedule for next year, won't have probably all the extra milling and things that we've had the last few years. I think pretty much every street, the profiles are pretty proper, I believe. So, but I should have that list to you either, in like November, December timeframe.
Good, thank you.
And now that all of it's done, the traffic study for that Haskett,
Mhm.
Hamilton, you think that's something that you can kind of think about now?
Yeah,
that
for
we
sure.
can-
Manager Sheridan and I went in and talked to, Mr. Broombaugh, who would like to submit, which would be our third estimate to do it. And, you know, for me, just trying to save some money, I just haven't really had time to look at it yet. But I'm not saying that it doesn't warrant the study either. I don't mean to come off like I can come up with all the solutions. I just have 2 or 3 that I think council may say, you know, this may be something we try for now and then see if we need to invest in the study.
Yeah.
So,
All right, yeah, thank you. Anything else?
I think Mr. Grafflin and the senior class should probably put in a proposal. Make it part of their senior thing. See how they do against the pros. You can work on that, Scott? You talking into it?
We'll talk to them.
All right. Any other discussion? Are there any motions for adjournment?
Motion we adjourn.
Second?
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.